Hey, so hi everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are here in celebration of National Library Week, and today is National Library Workers Day. So we wanted to celebrate you all, give you a chance to just relax, sit back, maybe laugh a little bit. I know many of you are familiar with William Ottens, who we are pleased to have here with us today. He is the creator of the popular Librarian Problems blog, Facebook page, Twitter feed, and the author of Librarian Tales, funny, strange, and inspiring dispatches from the stacks. He became a librarian because he loves books and reading, which is so not what he does all day. We know that, right? He earned his MLS in 2010 through the School of Library Information Management at Emporia State University. He has experience as a reference librarian and a library director. And he's currently the cataloging and collection development coordinator at the Lawrence Public Library in Lawrence, Kansas. So we'll save a few minutes for questions at the end, but let's get to it. So go ahead, William. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for that introduction, Jessica, and thanks
Sure.
you for inviting me to share about my problems with the Hawaii Library Association. I guess I'll start by just telling you a little bit more about my library journey. I started in libraries about 12 years ago as a reference assistant at the Lawrence Public Library in Lawrence, Kansas. Worked part-time to begin at the reference desk, just helping patrons find the resources they need. Then worked myself up to a reference librarian position. And then I was looking for other opportunities because the librarian opportunities at Lawrence were kind of scarce. And I applied for a director position at a small library in Iowa and got it. I started at the Oskaloosa Public Library in 2012, where all my problems expanded exponentially. Beautiful expanded Carnegie building, and I got to work with a great staff of 12, a youth librarian, a teen librarian, and had a great time there. Worked for about 3 years, and then my partner decided to go and get a job back in Lawrence. And also the Lawrence Public Library went through an $18 million expansion and renovation project. And I was quite jealous of my former coworkers, so I wanted to go back to that library. And fortunately, I got in there as a part-time reader services assistant back in 2015. And then my current position as cataloging and collection development coordinator opened up in 2016, and I got to step into that role. Kind of have a well-rounded experience in libraries, kind of working both the front lines and as a library administrator, and then kind of the back end now with cataloging and collection development. So it's been a great career. Now I'd like to start with a couple of questions for you, and I'm going to use Menti, which it's helpful if you have a mobile device or open another tab on your computer, and you'll navigate to menti.com. Let me pull up the site here, and I just have a couple of fun questions that I'd like to start my presentations out with to learn about the people I'm talking to. So I have this question: what do you prefer, hardcover or paperback? And if you go to menti.com and use the code 61547202, you'll be able to log in and answer the question.
Can you repeat that for us one more time there?
Yeah, if you go to menti.com.
Is it M-E-N-T?
MENTI.com and use the code 61547202. I don't know if you can see it on my screen or on the screen that I'm sharing. We got one response. Hey, not sure how many people we have. I'll share my preference. When I'm buying books for the library, I do prefer the hardcover just because they last a little bit longer. But I can't complain about a good paperback when I'm purchasing my own because they are a little cheaper. Okay. Uh, Gonna move on to another question, see if I can get that going. How many cardigans do you own? That should have switched on the screen that you were using. Always fun to see the number of cardigans people own. When I presented at the South Dakota Library Association conference, one of them in attendance said they had more than 50 cardigans. Yeah, 2 to 4 is about what I have in my own closet, and it kind of makes sense for a much warmer climate there in Hawaii. All right, gonna navigate back to the slideshow. Thank you for entertaining me there with your questions, or these questions. And let me tell you about the origins of librarian problems. I was working the reference desk back in 2009, 2010, and I had this funny interaction that kind of sparked this idea of just realizing that a day at the library is never the same. And I decided to create this blog to kind of share these problems or situations or stereotypes with animated GIFs. But there was one patron who came up to the desk at the library, and I was working the reference desk, and there's stacks to the left and stacks to the right. And she shuffles up to the desk and she asks, "Where are the books?" And I must have given her a look like this. That she continued, you know, the ones on DVD that you can play in your car. And my overly technical head was seeing DVD, books on DVD and in car, you know, and then it clicked, oh, audiobooks. She's talking about audiobooks on CD. And I was able to walk her over to where our audiobooks were and help her. And it just made me laugh, not at her, but just at the situation, and realize that sometimes your reference transactions are like putting together a puzzle. Sometimes all the pieces are there and you're able to direct them right to the materials or information that they're looking for. Sometimes, though, you have to lift up the table and search for that missing piece. So I started Librarian Problems on Tumblr back in 2012, I think, and I didn't think it was going to go very far. And like with all or a lot of technology, librarians tend to have a shiny object syndrome with the technology. And when you discover it, you're pretty impressed by it. However, you get to using it and it just becomes routine and you're not that impressed with it any longer. So I continued with librarian problems. It was encouraging that I got a couple of follows and then several follows. And then over the last 10 years, I've gained about 30,000 followers on Tumblr and Facebook. And it's just been a great way to connect with fellow library workers all over the world. They share their stories, they laugh and share the librarian problems that I post on Facebook and Twitter. So it's been a lot of fun. And then through the Librarian Problems Twitter feed, Skyhorse Publishing reached out, an editor, and asked if I would be willing to write a book. The first thing she said was a book of inspirational content for librarians. And I was like, well, that's not kind of what I do on the blog, but it was kind of a challenge to turn a blog full of animated GIFs into a book. But I sat down and I did it, and they published Librarian Tales, Funny, Strange, and Inspiring Dispatches from the Stacks. in September. And again, it's been great to see people's responses to it and some of the fan mail that I get through my platforms, and even a little piece of regular snail mail too, which is always exciting. So let me take you back to where all my problems began, library school. As Jessica said, I graduated from the School of Library and Information Management from Emporia State University in December of 2010 and got a position at the libraries around that time. But library school was a 2-year program. It was mostly online, but then you did 1 weekend a month intensive. And every time that weekend came up, I kind of waited until the last minute to do the assigned reading. But when I did it and completed it, I felt really proud of myself. But then there are often times when you get to class and the instructor says the discussion on that chapter isn't until the next session. My favorite part of library school was group projects, amazingly. It was great working with other people on small projects or semester-long projects. But I found out there were probably 3 different types of people that you'd be working with on group projects in library school or any group project. There's the leader. They like to get things organized really quickly, answer any questions, and assign projects. And then there's the overachiever, who gets all their work done quickly and pushes the next person, which is the procrastinator, to finish the project, whether that's through an email, last minute text message. It always came together pretty well. I think we're all now in the age of pandemic used to virtual class sessions and virtual meetings, but back in 2010 or so, it was just kind of starting those virtual class sessions, and they weren't always that exciting. Always appreciative though of what I learned in library school, because when graduation day came along, I felt pretty brilliant. Then after you graduate, you move on to the library job hunt. And if Hawaii is like anywhere in the United States and probably the world, the list of available library jobs isn't always that big. However, if you put in your application and you get an interview, it takes a lot of time to prepare for your interview. Make sure you look smart. And if you interview and you get the thank you for your interest letter, it's quite disappointing. But when you actually get a job offer, it's really exciting. You just kind of want to scream. For me, it was kind of like a fairy tale that first day on the job. A lot of librarians get their start in circulation, sometimes as a page. So now I'm moving on to an area where some might relate to, like when you're shelving books and you try several times to reshelve a book on a shelf and a patron's browsing that shelf, and every single time you go back to that shelf, the patron is still there. Get kind of frustrated, but a kind librarian will just move on to a different shelf and come back later. And then a patron starts browsing the cart of holds or reserves that you pulled. And you're like, nope, those are mine. And then someone misshelves a book right in front of you. And you just want to cry. Take it out of their hands and put it right. No. And when there's nothing else to do, the most exciting part of a page's job is shelf reading. Then you move on to working at the circulation desk, oftentimes as a circ desk assistant. And the problems you encounter there include waiting for a patron to find their library card in their wallet. Takes a few minutes, especially if they have one of those huge purses and they're digging down deep into it. Or when a patron returns a damaged item and claims that they didn't do it. Sometimes you just want to get in their face and confront them, especially if it's sopping wet. It's always a clue. But I'm all for providing a positive customer service experience for our patrons. So I always recommend smiling and nodding. Okay, I'll take a moment now to read an excerpt from Librarian Tales from Chapter 5, Circulation. I'm going to read about strange things people have found in the book drops. A very heavy discussion. Seriously, depending on the size of the library and how busy it is, emptying a book drop can sometimes be an exhausting, stressful, and even dangerous task. Ever try to load as many items in your arms to make as few trips as possible? Ever have a 1,000-page hardcover nearly smack you in the head? Ever wait for a horde of children to drop one book at a time into the return slot? Ever find a dead bird smashed beneath a pile of books? Yes, it's happened. But that's not the wildest thing discovered in a drop. On the Librarian Problems Facebook page, I asked what the strangest thing librarians have found while retrieving returned materials to their libraries. Here are a few of the weirdest. I opened one morning to be greeted by a squirrel who had gotten into and gotten stuck. He was nice enough not to pop out at me until after I opened it and dragged out the cart, but still gave me a heart attack. Another one said, a stolen license plate from a car. It happened while we were closed for Thanksgiving. Came in on Saturday morning and there it was on top of the pile. Screws still attached and everything. Remains of a fried chicken leg, DVD cases filled with live cockroaches, and acid poured into the drop on all the books. Yikes. A hot dog. No bun, no plate. Like maybe someone thought it was a trash can. Just an uncooked hot dog. A box of those good choice chickpea crackers under a load of books. The box was still pristine and totally unopened. It baffles me. A kitten. He was physically fine and now lives with the staff member and is only a little crazy, but who can blame him? A pointy piece of wrought iron fence. A patron popped up behind me and said, oh, that's my spear, and grabbed it out of my hand. An argument ensued over whether it was a weapon and if he could bring it into the library. And sometimes these aren't that crazy. I'll finish with here, a beautifully written letter tucked inside a book that was from the borrower to the next reader describing how this book touched her life. She was an older widow and felt that the books were helping keep her happy. We put the letter back inside the book. Always love the stories that people have shared with me on the Librarian Problems pages. Now I'll go to reference. Reference will always have a piece of my heart because that's where I got my start back in 2012. I just loved helping people at the desk, and I got to do all sorts of things in the reference department, like create displays, teach computer classes, do tech help. It was a great time, but it wasn't without its problems. Like when you get this question, which I'm sure many people have gotten a form of, I don't know the title, but the color of the cover is blue. And you're just like, tell me more. When a patron says we're a bad library because we don't have a certain classic. Again, you kind of want to get in their face and be defensive, but to provide that positive customer service experience. Again, just smile and nod your head. Then when you're trying to demonstrate the library's online resources and the internet quits. Womp womp. When you get the first request for tax forms, that's when the real fun begins. I don't know about library reference desks in Hawaii, but at Lawrence, we had a huge display right next to the reference desk with all of the different tax forms. This was like 10 years ago when state and federal government printed a ton of tax forms. And the first question they would ask when they came up to the desk was, where are the tax forms? No matter how big the sign was, no matter how obvious that error was, we always got that question. When a patron asks a question right after your shift ends, you're like, see ya. Most of the time, though, I was kind enough to stick around and answer the question. But if there was somebody there to replace me, I was like, this lovely person is going to take your question. And then when you find a book for a patron with just the color of the cover and half the plot, very exciting, and you know your skills. That brings us to a pop quiz. I'm going to take us back over to Menti. We'll do a different code, and we're going to do, can you guess the title of the book? Let me switch my screen here. Oh. Okay. Now, go back to menti.com. It's helpful to reload it and use the code 87871781. Let's see if we can get some players loaded. Okay, so I'll explain now how this will work. I'm going to give you a misheard title or a description of a book and 3 options for the title that the patron is actually looking for. You'll have a few seconds, like 5 to 10 seconds to answer. And the quicker you answer, the more points you're going to get if you get the right answer. So again, you're going to get a title, a misheard title or a description of a book. You'll select the title that you think it is. And the quicker you do that, the more points you get if it's the correct answer. So I've got 16 people in, 15 now, lost somebody. And it looks like that's about how many people we had. So I'm going to press enter to start the countdown. You'll have a few seconds to read, and then it'll pop up the 3 options. Okay, here we go. So answer fast. My professor said I need to read The Grape Giraffe. Something to do with depression? All right, The Grapes of Wrath. Very good. Let's see who was the quickest. On the leaderboard. Right, great job, MC, and everyone. All right, might get a little more difficult as we move along. Question 2, starting the countdown. The Genius Book. It's for the world's smartest people. Looks like I gave you 30 seconds to answer. Everyone has voted. All right, the answer we were looking for was the Guinness World Records. Kind of tricky, I know. Let's see the leaderboard now. Magical Rhino takes the lead. Oh, wait. All right. Next question. Starting the countdown. I think it had a little girl with telekinetic powers and a really mean headmistress. Everyone has voted. And Matilda was the book that the patron was looking for. Threw it off with telekinetic powers. But that mean headmistress, what was her name? He took that one. Magical Rhino still in the lead there. Starting the countdown. 4. An old man hangs out on a boat for a really long time. Five seconds just about left. All right. The answer I was looking for was The Old Man in the Sea. Haven't read that one personally, so I don't know how long that man hangs out on that boat. Magical Rhino still going strong. All right, final question. This one should be a challenge, maybe. The cover's mostly blue, and there's a sad face floating in the sky. How familiar are you with your classics? Ooh, the answer I was looking for was The Great Gatsby. You look at one of the original covers, it's kind of a dark blue cover, and there's these really sad looking eyes in the air above the city. All right. Who took the lead there? Megan, congratulations. I have a surprise for you. I have a copy of Librarian Tales that I'd love to send you. So if you want to connect with Jessica, your coordinator, and if she could communicate an address to the library or a personal address that you would like it to send to, I will sign it and send it your way. Thank you everyone for playing. I always have a lot of fun with that, and great way to test your skills on guessing your covers or recognizing your misheard titles. Let me go back to my presentation now. Okay. Moving on to youth services. I haven't been a youth librarian officially, but I've got to step in when my youth librarian, when I was the director of the Oskaloosa Library, was on vacation or out sick, and got to do some story times. And then I got to partner with her on some teen programming, which was always fun. All you have to do is set out the food and they come, right? So some of the problems that you face there can be very fun. When it was my turn to do story time, however, I was in front of a group of toddlers and it was my turn to get this look. because they did not know who Library Director William was. In the few times that I got to do story time, I did learn that there were 3 types of kids who always came to programs, not always, that were always the most challenging maybe, but I loved every kid there. First kid was the one who probably needed a nap. Then there was the kid or kids who knew everything, knew the story, corrected your pronunciation, already read that book. And then there were the kids who probably shouldn't have been there because they were sick. Sorry for the grossness there. So depending on how well your library's story time went, sometimes you want to walk away in tears, especially if it's just pandemonium and no one's paying attention. Other times, story time goes really well, and it just is like you're walking away on clouds and feeling like a rainbow. Other times, when you're trying to get kids to participate in programs, you have this great craft, or you're working with teens and you think you have this super great, awesome program that you've invited them to. Sometimes though, they aren't that enthusiastic, and the look on their face when you're trying to get them to participate looks like that. Not interested. Then, especially during summer reading, came up upon this problem. Your performer cancels at the last minute and you have no idea what you're going to do next. Unless you're a seasoned librarian and you have a good backup plan. It's always good to have a good backup plan, especially for kids. And then it comes time for you to organize the supplies closet, and you're just covered in glitter. Okay, I'm going to share a little bit more from Librarian Tales, this time from Youth Services, and just going to share about some of the crazy things that happened while people were either out in outreach visits or doing their story times that I was able to share in Librarian Tales. For this person, I once did a story time with a treasure hunt for some in-the-shell peanuts. When I brought the kids out of the storytime room and into the library to look for the peanuts, an adult was sitting at one of the tables reading the paper. There was a big pile of peanut shells next to him. One of our regular little guys turned to me at the end of a song and said, "Miss Laura, maybe you shouldn't try to sing anymore. You're really not good." I was reading Count the Monkeys at a school visit to a kindergarten. When I got to the part where the 9 lumberjacks, but still no monkeys, a little boy in a very exasperated voice said, "Oh, Jesus." Another librarian says, "I was reading a book about a ladybug and a real ladybug flew in and landed on me. The kids thought I was a wizard." And then, this one's not very pretty. I was at the summer reading points desk when a little 6-year-old came up with a big picture book. My brother did something unmentionable to it. Can I still get points? I won't go into what that unmentionable thing was. I held up the trash can and said, "Of course you can, sweetie. Put it right in here for me." So just like I think anywhere at the library, youth can be such a surprise. Moving on to tech support. Like I said, when I was working the reference desk at the Lawrence Library, I got to do tech support, which part of that meant just manning a desk in a computer lab and helping people sign on to their computers, file the tax forms, apply for unemployment, and all kinds of stuff. And other times it was like one-on-one tech appointments. So when you're working the tech support desk, the dreaded statement you probably will encounter is, "I can't remember my password." Uh-oh. And it's even worse when it's followed up by, or the answers to my security questions. Oh no, we got a chore for you. And then when you're working the desk and a patron whistles at you to get your attention. Like, what am I? And then a patron doesn't realize numlock is off and can't log into a computer. Just want to be Yoda and say, that is why you fail. When the network goes down and no one in IT is available, you're quite doomed. Patrons get quite upset when they come to the library and they find out that the internet is not working. When the computer lab is empty on your shift. Quite relaxing. Okay, now I've moved on to cataloging and processing. Most of my career was kind of in front, on the front lines. Even when I was a director, I took the opportunity to work the reference desk and the circulation desk. And then when I'm back in Lawrence now, I'm behind the scenes, ordering books and processing and cataloging items. And it's been calm, but it's not without its problems. For example, a patron fixes a book with Scotch tape. No. I've heard even duct tape have been seen. Database cleanup projects. Sometimes you have your nifty tools that you can do batch really quickly, and sometimes you have to go through one record at a time to clean things up. The most intense experience I think I've had at Lawrence was transitioning to our new integrated library system. I stepped into my position right when they had decided to purchase a new integrated library system and we're transitioning to it. So the benefit of that was I got to learn right when everybody else was learning it. But a lot of my catalogers and my acquisitions assistant was quite upset because nothing was the same. Okay, I'm going to move on to some common misconceptions I think a lot of librarians hear, especially from your fans, or your friends and family. Maybe when you told them that you were going to be a librarian, or when you meet a stranger and you tell them you're a librarian. For example, it must be nice to sit and read all day. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Let me tell you. Then, if you've ever gotten this question, it might be a little frustrating. How long have you been volunteering here? I think a lot of times people base that assumption on older libraries or smaller community libraries where they do have a lot of volunteer work. And nothing wrong with volunteers, love them, love the support they give the library. But I did apply for this job. I worked hard for my degree, and I do deserve to get paid for providing the resources and services that we do for the community. So it's always a little frustrating. I didn't want to bother you. I got this quite a few times at the desk, and it's like, I'm not being here paid to be here because I'm 5'10" and gorgeous. Always try to present a helpful face. And sometimes we get that most librarians are old and grouchy, and you just want to say, that's not me. And then, aren't libraries obsolete now that we have the internet? People have been using that for years, probably 10 years, 12, 20 years. Like, you sit on a throne of lies. We are still here. And moving on to pet peeves. Shared a lot about pet peeves in Librarian Tales. I'll share a few here. When someone pushes the books to the back of the shelves, they're just trying to be helpful, right? When your desk replacement is 15 minutes late, you're like, where are they? And then a lot of us have probably heard the as a taxpayer line, usually followed by a complaint or a nice suggestion. A lot of times you just kind of want to roll your eyes. But again, we want to provide that positive customer service experience for the patron. So just smile and nod your head. These two words are the worst words you can hear as a library director or a materials handling coordinator. Don't want to mess with those. And when all your cardigans are dirty, it's like you have nothing left to wear. Now, listening to all that, you might think, man, this guy really doesn't like his job. Why doesn't he get another one? That is the furthest thing from the truth. I love being a librarian. I love working with public. It just helps to laugh sometimes, to de-stress, and think about, the next day, a new day. It's going to be great because there are a lot of joys in this career. Like, when you first get your first library job, I said earlier that it was like a fairy tale to me. Switch out the fancy glittering dress with a cardigan and maybe some Converse Chucks, and that was me on my first day. Very starry-eyed. When someone checks out your staff pick, that is always very exciting. When you find a misshelved book, no one else could. That's librarian level 2, maybe. Yes. When you correctly recite a subject's Dewey number. Very proud of myself now that I'm cataloging some nonfiction books to be able to recite some Dewey numbers. Still learning. When a kid says they want to be a librarian like you when they grow up, that is always so heartwarming. And then when I was first given weeding responsibilities, very powerful. And finally, the first time I was librarian in charge. Very, very exciting. Okay, I'm going to share one more excerpt from Librarian Tales from my final chapter. I got to talk a little bit about the library's response to the COVID pandemic. It was March, I think, when our libraries decided, well, the health department decided to close the libraries and other public facilities to stem the spread of the coronavirus. And I think we all kind of freaked out then, especially my leadership team, because we didn't have a section in our disaster preparedness manual on responding to a pandemic. Just had been 100 years since, and it wasn't written. So we were kind of flying by the seat of our pants, trying to just take advice from the health department, from other libraries, and do the best that we could to close the building down, continue to provide services, whether that was digitally. Our youth program switched over to online stories. Mid-June or so, we developed our curbside pickup program. And then a little later, we started letting people back in the building, but on a very limited basis to pick up their holds. So I got the opportunity to close Librarian Tales with a section on the pandemic. And I'll just leave or end this now with this words of advice and maybe a little hope as we're nearing the end, possibly. I just got my vaccine yesterday, first dose, and we'll be getting my next one in a month or so. So let's see. I'm just one librarian with a limited perspective from one small part of the world, but I wish my words here can offer some semblance of hope. I've appreciated a new take on an old idiom that's been quoted by so many politicians, writers, leaders, and social media accounts recently that it's hard to trace its origins. We're not in the same boat, we're in the same storm. When it comes to resources, staff, and the communities they serve, every public library is unique. Some are consistently well-funded while others struggle each year with shoestring budgets and the threat of cuts. Some are housed in modern, expansive, eco-friendly buildings while others remain in outdated public facilities with ailing infrastructure. Some have little to no staffing issues, while others experience burnout, low morale, poor management, and more. Whatever the differences, all libraries are facing the COVID-19 pandemic. One of our life preservers at LPL has been reaching out to other institutions and library professionals to learn how they have been responding to the pandemic to help inform our own plans. Knowing we can draw on the wisdom, knowledge, and experience of others has strengthened our resolve. That to me is essentially what libraries have been about from the beginning: access to information to improve lives. As long as we learn from and support each other, we'll get through this pandemic together to the new normal, whatever that may look like. So again, thank you so much for having me here. It's been great connecting with you, and I hope you had a few laughs. Maybe pick up my book, check it out from the library would be great. Again, thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Yeah, thank you very much, William. I know we were chuckling throughout that. The memes that you pick sometimes just perfectly capture that emotion. And like you said it, you think that you've heard it all working in a library, and then you talk to one of your colleagues and you hear a story that just makes your mind say, wow. but we are lucky to do what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for William in the chat? Joy was sharing, she got this from one of her students one day. The student asked, how do librarians afford to get such nice clothes?
That's kind of shady.
Yeah, I know we've heard it all. Yeah. One of my favorite parts in your book, William, was when you shared when you were at your branch manager, a new branch manager, and your janitor pointed out to you all the cracks in the building. And oh man, I felt for you, because it was like, oh, I could see that, just thinking the building's falling apart.
Yeah, and I showed the picture. It was a beautiful expanded Carnegie building, and it was right on the line between the expansion and the original building. The original building was built in 1904, and they expanded in 1997. And just for whatever reason, a bunch of these little cosmetic things added up, and it freaked my building manager out, and he thought that the building was falling apart. And I was shocked, but I was also like, well, let's have some patience here and go through this. Maybe invite our architect in to take a look at this. And it turned out, yeah, it was just a bunch of cosmetic things that just added up over the years.
Yeah. Mhm. We have some other comments. Megan says that your blog brightens her day. So
I'm glad.
yep, I think we all need a little dose of that some days. All right, great. Well, thank you everybody for sharing this hour with us, and we want to thank William again. Yeah, and we'll continue to follow you on social media, and you never know, you might have another book in the works, right?
Thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Oh, Jessica, did Megan connect with you? I think was in her book.
Yeah, I will reach out to her and get her email address and make sure that we get hooked up so that we can send that her way.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, that was very generous of you. Thank you. Okay, we'll be in touch.
All right, bye.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.